Hey, welcome back to another loopstation tutorial. My name is Playgue, and today we're talking about the transpose. Once again, this is going to kind of be like a part 1 and 2, just like the delay and panning delay tutorials. We have the transpose as well as the pitch bend that are very similar to each other, so I'm going to be explaining a lot of things that can apply to both of the effects, but it doesn't matter what order you watch these in. It's just they kind of complement each other. But today we're going to talk about the transpose, which is available on track effects and input effects A only. And we cannot pair this up with the granular delay for some reason, as well as the tape echo, but we can pair it up with track effects after the fact. All right, so get ready for some music theory, boys. Let's talk about what this number means. Transpose will change the sound by one semitone with a range of 2 octaves. If you were like me when you first started using this thing, I had no idea what any of those words meant. Very, very, very briefly. What this essentially means is you have 2 octaves of range. So you have 0, which is just the regular signal that comes in. You can change it up 1 octave or 12 semitones, and you can reduce it by 12 semitones or go down 1 octave. I have a much more detailed explanation of what octaves and semitones mean in my octave tutorial, which is this effect right here. This thing is pretty cool and it's pretty useful, and that is literally the only parameter that we have is transpose, and it's just the number of semitones that we can change a sound by. We have positive and negative numbers. Positive
number means that we're going up in tone.
And negative numbers means that we are going down in tone. It's really hard not to mimic my voice to doing what the thing is doing right now. But yeah, it's cool. So what is a semitone? Now, I'm not qualified enough to explain deep music theory, but I can explain enough in simple terms to help you understand what this all means. A semitone, from what I understand, is the smallest unit of measurement in a scale. For example, if I understand this right, I can record a scale, which we will do with the robot, so we know exactly what note we are using. We'll do a C note, and I'll record it with a little bit of reverb here. So we now have a C note here, a D flat, a D, and an E flat. If I do a +1 transpose on a C note, that should sound like a D flat. So here's a D flat, and then here's the C note. This should sound like this if we put the transpose of +1. If we put a +2, that's 2 semitones. It should bring it up to this D note that's up here. So let's hear that, how that sounds. There's the D note. Hey, we're doing pretty well here. So +3 semitones. What should that sound like? It should be an E flat. That's right, which is going to be this one right here. Pretty cool. And we can go in the opposite direction as well. So if we do a -2, what note should I use this -2 on to make it a C note? If you said D, you are correct. Good boy. So we are going to make this note here, the D note, sound like the C note. So now that you understand semitones, you should understand what the only parameter on the transpose does. The main thing that you can do with this is change the note of whatever it affects. So it's a good idea to study keys and scales so then you know what sounds best together. Easiest thing to do, though, is if you don't understand anything about music theory, which is acceptable, you can just do plus or minus 12. Just literally max it out or have it minimum. That will change it by an octave, and it'll sound good no matter what you decide to do it on. Now, depending on the sound, it will sound choppy. And it depends on the note of the original signal, too, and how that clashes with the new note trying to be transposed. All right, so I'll give you an example of something that sounds actually pretty decent here. So I have this audio sample here. And you'll notice that there really isn't too much chopping going on. So in this case, this sound, it sounds really, really well with the transpose. There doesn't seem to be any chopping that's going on. But if you remember with the robot voice that I recorded here for the example, you could hear that choppiness that was occurring. So sometimes it doesn't sound great. Other times it sounds good, but only in one direction. Like with Playground, if we play, let's say these two tracks here, it works well with going down an octave, but it's not working as well with going up an octave. So I'll do like a +5 +6 versus a -5 -6. It sounds off, but if I do -5 and -6. So it's really going to depend on your mix and the sounds that are coming in. It seems to be the worst for vocals or any type of sustained notes. You can hear that some semitones are having that choppy effect, but other semitones, that choppy effect immediately goes away. Again, I think it's because of the waveform is actually interfering with itself, and it's creating that kind of choppy slicer-like pattern with the interference. So any type of notes that are sustained as one note, that has a chance of causing that interference and vocals. But the MK2 does have an updated algorithm for this. I don't know if that fixes that issue, but on the MK1 it does tend to be an issue. Outside of that, there's a lot of different things we can use this for. So we can use this to auto-tune yourself. So for example, say you have a hard time remembering a certain note. You can use this to tune yourself to that note. Like let's say you need an E flat, but when you keep doing the note, you're doing a D note for oh. So you're making a D note, but you want to know what the E flat sounds like. And so you can use this to literally tune your own vocals or whatever instrument to the sound or the key that you are trying to get to. You could also use this to get into a range of vocals that you can't normally reach. So like for me, I have a range of about 3 to 4 octaves of vocal range, but I do eventually peak out on both ends. I think my lowest is like a G sharp, like 1, but let's say I need something that's even lower than that by like 1 or 2 semitones. Well, I can do that lower note and put a trans of -2. That will give me that lower note that I would be looking for. Or let's say I need something that's a little bit higher, that's a little bit outside my range. I could use a transpose of plus whatever number that I need to be able to do that, to literally tune myself to that higher or lower note. Another thing is you don't have to record it necessarily. You can just sing the note that you know, transpose it, then turn that off and then sing that note. You can do that like in the middle of your song or whatever, or just through your headphones, or however you want to do it. Similar to the robot, you can literally sing a note. Oh, wait, I think that's a D note. Yeah, that's D, but what's E? Okay, now I got the note, and then you can, proceed with whatever. You can also do nightcore like lyrics with this. So a great example is actually Mirsa at GBB 2023 against Biscuit. You can also just transpose your entire track to be plus whatever number of semitones that you want it up. So like Ganjaman. But like nightcore. Anyways, moving on. We can use assigns to set up values or floors to make certain notes easier to play, or to play in a sequence of certain things. We'll turn on an assign switch on, and that assign is for the track effects A. So if we have this control, what we can do is we have the full range of control here on this knob, but over here we have the range limited to +1. You can also use assigns to set up specific notes, for example. So not just limit your range, but let's say you want to hit certain notes. You could have tracks muted, and you could have set the play and stop buttons up. So then you could have one note here, and then another note here, and then another note here, and then another note for the stop, and it'll cycle through the different semitones if you wanted to do it that way too. So let's say you want to turn the effect on or off. You can actually do so in two ways, besides just setting the value to 0, because that doesn't do anything. But you could either turn the effect off as a whole, like just turn the entire effect off, or you can tap the track's edit button. So let's say you have more than one track that is being affected by the transpose of whatever, +7. Well, instead of turning it off for all the tracks, you could just tap the edit button instead, which will turn the transpose off for just that track. Another trick is you can use this like a vinyl flick, but you have a lot more control over this vinyl flick than you do with the actual vinyl flick. It won't slow the track down at all too, so you won't lose your tempo with the track, which is also really, really convenient. But that can sound really cool too, and there's several tracks that ends up sounding like you're playing with this like a vinyl flick.
Oh god, like this track right here. Incinerate.
So like you saw there how I was just kind of playing around with this. It doesn't have to be like so extreme that you're like messing with this like it's a vinyl flick, although you can absolutely do that. You can do anything you want because you are an individual. Anyways, you can, instead of just going straight to, let's say, up an octave, you could come down and then back up to the octave, and that'll create kind of this scratch effect that sounds really, really cool. The last cool tip I'll give you is if you ever wanted to sound like a portal turret, check this out. This is so stupid, but if you do a robot of any kind and you put a trans of plus 12 on the robot, you'll end up sounding like a portal turret. Check this out. So we have this robot thing here, but check this out, ready?
I seek you out, I seek you out, I seek you out inside.
Like, what? Portal turret? And that's it. That's it. All the cool tricks that I have for the transpose. Again, check out the pitch bend tutorial for more cool tricks that you can do with the transpose, and you can apply a lot of these tricks to the pitch bend as well. But let's look at a track that utilizes the transpose in a few places. That was mint.